You're listening to the Straight A Conspiracy Podcast.
Now, in the Straight A Conspiracy, we say that there are 3 things that you need to know about your brain. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about thing numero uno. That's number 1 for you, Katie, since you don't speak Spanish.
What? Does it do? Just because I'm from New Hampshire.
And why are you... Well, no, but crucially, why are you able to speak Spanish? Why are you able to learn that? Well, a lot of it comes down to automaticity. You see that
Whoa,
segue?
that was great.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no. This is the great news, PS, for you, is that there's a lot of intricacy about how your brain works, but you only need to know 3 things to know how to learn everything. So that's good, because you don't have to worry about all of those other details. Automaticity is the first thing, and it's just a big fancy word for how you make things automatic, right? Which you already know that you can do, because if you are not a toddler still, you can think about the fact that when you were little and you were learning to walk or learning to read, you were terrible at that. You were really bad at it.
You literally fell on your face.
You fell on your face. If you were learning to read, you used to need to sound out every single letter, and then you could do maybe 3-letter words like cat, but that was it. And over time, you get faster and faster at that stuff, so that today you can read a newspaper, you can read a book, and you can be thinking about the bigger concepts and arguments in there, and you're not stopping to be like, wait, what does the letter F sound like? Okay, now I can go on, right? You've made that automatic. Your brain is awesome and is working for you in that way all the time.
Yeah, and crucially, we sometimes call the result of automaticity habits.
Mm-hmm.
So humans are great at forming habits. Some of those habits are great. Some of those habits are not so helpful. But crucially, a lot of what learning is really about is making certain things habit, whether it's reading a language or doing math problems. And what this automaticity does is it makes it so that some things are so automatic that you no longer need to think about them.
Sweet.
Thanks,
brain.
And that all speeds up the rate at which you can do things. So now you can more effortlessly read, right? Cool.
So how does this happen? So inside your brain, every time that you are doing something over and over again, your brain is wrapping your neurons in this stuff called myelin. And it's basically like insulation. It basically takes a little neural pathway that has started and it makes it smoother and faster. It's like changing something from a country road, widening it out. I'm not advocating for cutting down trees in this particularly, but widening it out and paving it and making it into like a superhighway.
That's right.
So that all of a sudden you can go faster, traffic can move faster, more can go at once, right? Your brain is strengthening those connections for you.
And although this analogy isn't eco-friendly, the analogy that we used in the Straight A Conspiracy is that it's like the first time you go into the jungle to look for buried treasure or, a city of gold. And
as any reasonable person would do in 2017.
El Dorado, the city of gold. So when you're going looking for El Dorado, the city of gold, the first time, it's really hard going. You have to get your machete out and you have to chop down lots and lots and lots of rainforest. And, you make a sort of like really bad, dirt path. But over time, as you start to build out, and you're going back and forth between the El Dorado, the city of gold, and, the ocean where you're presumably shipping your gold out to the world, you're beating a stronger and stronger path. And so that path is getting better and better and better. And then eventually you might decide to up the speed at which you're like, dirt road won't do it anymore now. We're going to make it so that cars and trucks can go along this thing, and we're going to build a superhighway. And that experience is very much the experience of learning something new. The first time that you encounter any new material, it's really hard going.
Yeah.
And it's really hard going for everyone. You're like hacking through that jungle and it is not going well. But over time, if you keep showing up and you keep on, struggling with it and struggling with it, you get better and better and better. And pretty soon it's nice and smooth going. It's super easy.
And you practice the same thing over and over again. So take a minute, think about something that you're really great at now. It could be a dish that you cook really well. It could be reading, or it could be some other skill that you have, like playing an instrument or whatever.
Skateboarding, video games.
Yeah, anything. And take a moment to pat yourself on the back. Because you were terrible at that when you started. And even though now, because you've been doing it for a long time, it feels like you always were this good. It was always easy. But if you really think about it, it wasn't easy. You just wanted to do it badly enough that you practiced over and over again until you got to be amazing at it.
That's right.
So in that case, automaticity, or in that sense, automaticity is the greatest thing your brain does for you. It's so great. It's like, we're going to make you so aces at this if you just do it a few more times, right?
That's
And
right.
you'll be amazing. Now, let's also think about the ways that automaticity is actually a dangerous thing that your brain does. And that's because a lot of what happens, all of that stuff happening in your brain, is invisible work, right? You can't really see automaticity happening in your own brain to know, oh yeah, I am getting better even though it feels like a struggle. And what's even worse is that we can't see automaticity happening in other people's brains around us.
So this kind of sounds like a genius myth.
It is kind of like a genius myth, because what happens is you get to school, let's say, as a little kid. A lot of people have had this experience. You show up on the first day, there's some kid sitting 2 desks over from you, and that kid raises his or her hand right away for every single question that the teacher asks, and you're still like, wait, what are we doing? Addition? I don't understand what this is. And you see that happening at lightning speed, and you have to assume, because that's what you've been told about how being smart works, you have to assume, well, that person raises their hand right away because they just get it, and I just don't. So I guess that's what it looks like to be a math person, and maybe I have to go look and see what my thing is. And the reality is that you have no idea what that person did to get to that point. You don't know if that little kid, like practices his addition and subtraction or his times tables in the car every day on the way to school with his dad. Or maybe her parents are both writers, so it's not weird to, go home at the dinner table and hear the word metaphor. It's not scary in that context. You don't know what anybody's behind the scenes is. You just see the result. And because automaticity is so good at what it does, at making you so speedy at the things that you've practiced, that is why we all get thrown.
So the thing that makes my brain awesome is the thing that makes other people's brains awesome.
Yes.
But sometimes they're so awesome at those things that I think my brain sucks.
Is broken. Yes.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Because no one ever told us that automaticity exists.
Right. And crucially, that you're not thinking about, is that comparison fair?
Right.
Right? So that person, really may be amazing at math at this point. They may know all the answers lightning fast, but you're not thinking, have we done the same amount of practice?
Right.
Or have they done a lot more practice? How many hours have they put into this? What kind of practice are they doing? So you have to remember that when you're comparing yourself to things, often those comparisons aren't fair.
Yes.
And that sometimes the image that you're seeing or what you're seeing does not reflect what actually went in. In fact, it's a lot like photoshopping, right? Where you're seeing this image and you don't see
the final product.
That's right.
Right?
But you don't see what's happening behind the scenes. A lot like the genius myths. So, no one's questioning that, did Thomas Edison move the light bulb forward? Is the light bulb made better by Edison? Yes, 100%. But did you see the process that got there? No.
Yeah. And it's particularly tricky, I think, for learning and school and intellectual pursuits. Because most people would say that if if you went to your friend's soccer practice and you watched him kick 100, he stayed late after practice to kick 100 corner kicks into the goal until he was getting it consistently. Then if you went to the game that weekend and he scored a goal off a corner kick, you'd be like, yeah, he's not a magical wizard. He just did it 100 times. I watched him do it, right?
Yeah.
But you can't watch other people learn. It's happening inside their brain. You don't know exactly what they're doing with their attention, with how they're practicing it, how engaged they are, how enthusiastic they are. You can't see those things. And so we have a really hard time making that same comparison between things we can see people practice over and over and things we can't see.
Katie, you don't realize it, but just now, I was practicing my times tables.
Wow, see?
What?
I didn't even know. And now you're better at multiplication than I am, and I was just talking.
But
so unfair.
Also, crucially, that would mean I was being rude and not totally wrapped up in everything that you were saying, which actually I just...
Because you've never heard me say that before, probably.
but also, actually, I was just lying, and you didn't even know that I was lying. I was not thinking about times table. I was just wrapped up. I was so engaged in everything you said.
You can never tell.
You can
is
never
everything
ever
an
tell.
Illusion? Yeah, no.
But the point is that you never ever know what anybody else is thinking about. And
That's
and that brings up another good point, which is that sometimes you're sitting in class and you've got all these kids, kids figure out very early on that I have to have my face turned towards the teacher. But meanwhile, a lot of kids have their face turned towards their teacher, but some of them are thinking about lunch, some of them are thinking about how they can't wait to get off school to play some video game, some of them are actually really engaged in the material, and that's what they're learning.
Yep.
And, crucially what that means is that their attention is not always in the same place. And that's...
all practice is not created equal. Yeah.
And that's part of what we'll be unpacking in the next episode. And that's just a sort of a little teaser for the second thing that you need to know about your brain.
Yep.
But the important thing to realize is that, we know that the fact that you can understand this podcast and understand this conversation and that you can understand your native language, that tells us that your automaticity works.
Yes.
We know that your automaticity works. The question is, how are you using it and what are you using it for?
Yeah, that basically, if you've ever learned any skill and it is now faster than when you first tried it, you have automaticity. The hardware is A+. The hardware is working for you. So now it's really just about what you do with it.
That's right.
Right? And we set up for ourselves, because we make these comparisons to people we see around us and how good they are at something that we're trying to do, we get unrealistic expectations for how you're supposed to become good at something.
Katie, how is my driving?
Actually, real bad. Hunter is maybe the most dangerous driver I've ever seen. And not because he's, too fast, too furious, but rather because he drives like a grandmother coming from an eye appointment. But every time that we're on the phone and Hunter is in the car, the conversation background is peppered with of people going around and behind.
But it's also because as I start to, because I'm so
I would
wrapped
argue
up,
that it's something that you haven't practiced enough.
I'm so engaged in what Katie is saying that anyway, I'm a really bad driver and I'm really excited. Nothing makes me happier than not having to drive. But the point is that here you begin to see, this is just a really good example of, here are these two people, they do a particular skill very differently, but is it a function of automaticity, or is it a function of the kind of practice, the amount of practice, what the experience is, even, there's, it's a good thing to unpack because it's a super practical thing. And yeah, we can take a look at that in future episodes about Hunter's driving.
To talk about that more.
Yeah, there are a lot of things where we're going to find out that Katie does them well and I do them terribly.
But that's what we want you to think about for, until the next episode, is just what places you think you have unrealistic expectations about how you should be good at that thing. And you get them from people around you in class, but you also get them a lot of the time from the people who are around you in your life. Your parents, for example. As a kid, your parents are not often stopping to show you the process it took them to become as good as they are at reading or at their job, what it took them to get the success that they have. We're not trained to sort of describe our own process very often, but what you need to understand is that anybody who is able to do anything, it's because of automaticity, and if they're faster at it, it's just because they've practiced more.
Yep.
End of story. So look for those things in your own life where you have those unrealistic expectations, where you're comparing yourself to somebody when it's really not fair because you just haven't put that practice in yet. And then start thinking about how amazing your brain really is to have automated all the stuff you already know.
So are you saying that the driving thing, that I don't drive well because I haven't been doing the right kind of practice?
I am saying that.
Oh.
But I'm also saying that it's never too late. The great news is that your brain is automating all the time.
Yeah.
So if you want to put your attention on that and make that the thing you automate next, I recommend it.
The straight A driving conspiracy.
The straight lane conspiracy.
Yeah. Oh no. Shame.
Yep. We'll get into that soon too.
In a couple of episodes.
Awesome.
But yeah, you have automaticity. How are you using it? And as Katie said, I'm just repeating what Katie said. So just unrealistic expectations. Think about those suckers.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Straight A Conspiracy with your hosts, Katie O'Brien and Hunter Motz. While Katie and Hunter are the faces of this podcast, they couldn't do this on their own. They have been lucky enough to have a group of dedicated people help them to get these ideas out there. Brian Jennings, a media literacy expert and author from Rhode Island, edits all of the podcasts. Andrew Hunt in LA helped film and record them. Mandy Ainsley in Johannesburg, South Africa, created a better website. And Josh McKenty, a marketing guru from New Zealand who wishes that he had this book when he was a kid, is devoting his time and energy to make the message of the Straight A Conspiracy accessible to everyone, everywhere. And you can help too. To find out how, visit thestraightaconspiracy.com. It's time for everyone, everywhere to know their own potential and get equipped with the tools to unlock it. While Katie and Hunter love books, they are also screenwriters, directors, and actors. Josh McKenty had the idea to make a multimedia online version of the Straight A Conspiracy. We're calling it the Straight A Conspiracy Bootcamp. It's the one-stop shop to onboard humans into the 21st century. It will be entirely digital so we can distribute it to millions of people that much faster. If you want to support the podcast and this movement in an easy way, simply visit thestraightaconspiracy.com and click on the Amazon affiliate link before you make any purchase. Amazon will give us a piece of that sale. More money means more podcasts, and more money for a project we're very excited about, the Straight A Conspiracy Bootcamp.